A few months ago, I was busy preparing to move to a new house when I came across something from my past. I was going through my belongings trying to figure out what to keep and what to discard when I found an old shoebox stuffed down to the back of my closet. Curious, I opened it up and found out that it was full of CDs. I flipped through them and realized that these were backups of files from over 10 years ago. I remember that this was how I used to back up stuff before external hard drives became affordable enough for me to just start backing up with them. I stopped packing and started checking out the CDs on my computer. They were mostly full of stuff I'd collected off the net, like MP3s, ROMs, and animated GIFs. I then started to come across a CD that was labeled Conversations with Pawn. I stared at the CD with some reservation for a moment before loading it into my computer. The CD contained a bunch of images, a couple of audio files, and some text dumps from the message boards. Looking over these files made me recall an incident that occurred many years ago. It was an incident that had slipped from my mind until I saw the CD again. Honestly, I was glad to have forgotten about it. It was a pretty freaky experience, and to this day I still don't know what to make of it. It was 2004, last year of high school, and I spent most of my free time being an admin for an emulation message board. It was a particularly taxing job. I was one of the 3 guys who were admins, and the board itself was pretty niche, so we usually didn't get a great deal of traffic. Back then, there wasn't the bot problems you find on boards these days. Most of the time I just had to log in, check my messages, then browse through the forums to see if anyone was breaking any rules or just being a dick. It was a pretty fun gig, and I got the most enjoyment out of messing with persistent trolls. Being an admin allowed me to change their avatars. I had pics of crying babies for such occasions, or edit their posts. Usually I'd have them say stuff like, "I suck," or "I cry into my pillow at night," or my personal favorite, "I left my brain in the womb." Basically, I'd used to get a real kick out of administrating justice on the board. So one night a new guy registered to the forum and created a thread called "Need Help to Pull Apart My NES." The following is from that thread. "Hey guys, I'm just wondering if anyone has links to a diagram for an NES. I've been hunting around the internet for a while, and I'm just having a hard time finding them. I got an old NES and I want to pull apart and modify. Well, there's a few resources you can look at here. The site's a bit of a jumbled mess, so it should be a great place to start. Good luck. You can also check out this site. They have a message board so you can join up with and ask for advice. Thanks, guys. Geez, these diagrams and instructions look really complicated. Man, I hope I can get this to work." I was slightly mystified by his question, and I had some time to kill, so I thought I'd ask him. "Hey, Pon, I'm just curious, what kind of modification are you looking to do to your NES?" "Hi, Pesmerga. As a kid, I used to play the hell out of my NES, but the NES broke down a few years back. I got a Game Boy, and I wanted to rip the card reader out of my NES and attach it to the Game Boy. I guess since the Game Boy and NES graphics look about the same, that should work." "Oh, wow, that sounds like a really bad idea. You probably just end up wrecking both systems. If you want to play some NES games, why don't you just get an emulator?" "Hi, Pesmerga. Yeah, I thought about that. While I was trying to find diagrams for the NES, I kept finding emulation web pages. That's how I stumbled across this site. See, I can't afford those card readers that you buy and let hook up your cartridges to PCs, though. My next plan would be to actually make one for myself, and I could hook that up to my PC." I almost laughed at this. I explained to Pon what ROMs were, and he got really excited. That's not necessary. You could just download ROMs and you'll be good to go. Don't ask where to get ROMs, though. It's against the forum rules." "Hi, Pesmerga. What are ROMs?" See, I got the gist now that he really wasn't very technical savvy, which was fair enough. We all had to start from somewhere, right? "Hi, Pesmerga. Oh my god, are you telling me that I can play NES games on my PC right now?" After explaining to him about ROMs and emulators, I didn't hear back from him for a few days. He then came back to the board and became a bit of a regular. He would mostly start threads in which he was asking questions about emulation problems he was having. A lot of people didn't have any time for him. They felt that he was just an annoying person who asked dumb questions. I remember one night he started a thread about how he couldn't get an emulator to read games he had downloaded. We then had to explain to him, get this, what a zip file was and how it worked. See, one of the other admins was thinking of just banning him. He didn't like the fact that Pon was starting him new threads about stuff that had already been answered in earlier threads. I told him not to do that. I'd have a word with Pon. I don't know why I decided to step in. I sort of felt bad for the kid, I guess. I also felt a bit of a connection to him because he's one of the only few people I'd run across who was also a big fan of the RPG Suikoden. So I told Pon to check things through the board before posting any questions that might have already been asked and answered. I then told him if he got really stuck, just private message me. It wasn't long before he started messaging me. At first he would just ask me questions. Lots of questions. Fortunately, it seemed to be a quick study. I didn't find myself having to explain things to him over and over again, so I wouldn't say he was stupid, just green. Soon enough, he started to ask me for some game recommendations. This led to us talking about what games we were playing. It was from there that we started having a correspondence for the next few months. We only really talked about games and movies, though. The only personal stuff I knew about him was that he was 16 and he lived in London. One night, we were having a conversation about Metroid games. I just clocked Super Metroid for the millionth time and was thinking of dusting off the original Metroid and giving that a go. Hey, that reminds me, have you ever heard of the secret worlds in Metroid 2? It was a pretty well-known glitch. Basically how it works is if you're falling down a long shaft in some places in the game, and then press the select button repeatedly really fast, you can make wall tiles disappear. If you go through the tunnels that created, you'll end up outside the map. You can then find rooms that are tile swaps of just other rooms that scroll repeatedly forever, and rooms that look like they've been randomly thrown together. Apart from using it to sequence break, it's pretty pointless. It's more of a novelty than anything else. Some people started up a website devoted to the secret worlds. They were obsessed with mapping the whole thing out, like they were explorers braving uncharted territory or something. I tried it out myself once on my Game Boy. I quickly got frustrated, though, after I kept getting stuck in walls when I moved between rooms. Oh yeah, I remember the glitch. Why do you ask? See, I just found out about it and I got it to work today. It's kind of fun. I didn't hear from Pawn for a couple days after that. Then one night he sent me a message. Hey, I'm still messing around with that Metroid 2 Secret World. I've been reading up on how to use the worlds to skip areas of the game. I'm still getting a hang of it, but it's really trippy in there. It's hard to describe. I thought Pawn how to take screenshots and upload them so he could show me the stuff he was finding, and a few days later I got this message. Hey, Peshmerga, God, you're not gonna believe it. The game just suddenly crapped out on me. I was messing around in the secret world and all of a sudden I went to this room. The music changed and started playing like I had to fight a Metroid. The next thing I know, this garbled mess was flying at me. Absolutely freaked the hell out of me. Well, at least you can see I figured out how to take screenshots now. I'll let you know if I see anything else. I'm loving this hidden world stuff. Pawn. Oh yeah, I forgot you run into glitched out monsters in the secret world. Don't worry too much about them, man. Like, the rooms, they're just graphically all messed up, but they'll still behave the same way they do in the game. After that, I didn't hear from him for about a week. Then one night I was in the message boards and I got this message. Peshmerga, something weird is going on. I found a new area tonight. It's a room which is made up of bits and pieces of save points. I found a room like this one before, but it's different. None of the saves work, which is weird because they usually do in the secret world. And usually when you stand on saves in the secret world, there are weird symbols where it should say press start to save, right? But some of those saves are different, like when I stand on them, random words are appearing. Here, hold on, I'm uploading the photos now, I'll send you the links in a moment. Pawn sent me the links and I looked over the images he had uploaded. Dare, Legacy, My, Stop You Stealing, Now. I knew straight away that this wasn't just a glitch. Look, man, I've never heard anyone mentioning anything like this what you're describing. To me, it sounds like that ROM image, it's hacked. I asked him where he got the ROM image and he gave me the address. When I checked out, the page wasn't there anymore, which wasn't really surprising. Back then, ROM websites were frequently popping up and being taken down almost immediately. Is there any chance it could damage my computer? I wouldn't think so. I've never heard of a hacked ROM doing any malicious damage before. Just to be on the safe side, though, make sure you have like the latest antivirus softwares. Do a scan. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna keep playing around with it then. I'll let you know if I find any more surprises. Catch you later. Just before I was about to go to bed, I looked at the pictures again. It occurred to me that the words might form a sentence. I wrote the words down on a piece of paper and started trying out combinations. Eventually, I came up with, "How dare you stop stealing my legacy?" I thought it was a rather strange sentence. I couldn't figure out why anyone would even bother hacking that into the game. I don't even understand what it meant. And a few days later, I got a message from Pawn. Hey, Peshmerga, check it out. I turned on Metroid 2 tonight, and I pressed start to load up my game, and something happened. Usually it goes straight to where you last saved, but this time it just stayed on the title screen. The sound becomes really distorted, and I thought it had been frozen. I was just about to reset the game when the screen changed and this message popped up. Last chance to stop. Then this weird sound started playing. I don't know, it's really hard to describe. Is there any way to record sound out of an emulator? I want to try to capture it if it happens again so you can hear it. I wonder who did the hack. I keep thinking that there must be a reason if they bothered to put this much stuff into it. And there must be more to find. I'm going to keep exploring and see what else I can find. I thought Pon had to, capture audio and gave him my email address. I told him to attach the files there if he did manage to record any sounds from the game. I thought about what Pon had described to me, and I had to admit that I was pretty impressed by the hack. I also agreed with Pon's reasoning. If someone had bothered to put this much effort in, then it was likely that they had done more. It was just a matter of finding it. Though I was surprised that I'd never heard of the hack before, I started browsing through ROM hack sites, trying to find the one that Pon was playing. I didn't have any luck, so I asked around on a few IRC channels, but no one had ever seen anything like I was describing. The following night I was browsing the message boards when I noticed I had a new private message. I saw that it was from Pon, and I opened it up. Pesmerga, something freaky is happening in the secret world. I found myself in a room that looks like one of the rooms with the statues and an item, except all the blocks are wrong. I walked into the room and the music played that you hear right when you run into a Metroid, except there wasn't any Metroid in the room. I left, came back, the way I came in, and I was in a different spot to how it was before. It was a passageway that just scrolls on endlessly. But the music is wrong. It doesn't sound like anything in the game. I managed to capture it, though, and I'm about to email you the file. Okay, I'm downloading the file right now. Hey, man, do you want to play some RA2 later? Sure, sounds like fun. Hang on a second. Something's knocking at my door. I'll be back in a moment. Cool. The audio file had finished downloading, and I listened to it while I waited for Pon to come back. I didn't know what to make of it. I never heard a Game Boy make that kind of a sound before. At first it just sounded like a foghorn, but then another sound started to play over the top of the foghorn noise. The other sound didn't seem familiar to me somehow, and I couldn't quite place it. I found myself getting spooked, so I quickly closed that file. I got up and made myself a cup of coffee and a snack. By the time I got back to my computer, 15 minutes had passed. You still there, man? I waited a few more minutes, but I didn't get a response from Pon. I got worried for a moment, and then just figured out either a friend or family member had come by, and he was busy. I surfed the net for a bit, did some admin duties, checked my messages again. Pon still hadn't even come back. I was pretty tired by that point, so I shut down my computer and went to bed. I got up early the next day and checked to see if Pon had left me a message, and he still didn't get back to me. I headed off for school and didn't get home till the evening. After I grabbed a bite to eat, I sat in front of the computer and checked my email and private messages, and still there was nothing from Pon. I left a few more messages and waited for his response. Over the next few days he still didn't get to me, and I really started to freak out. I skipped school for a few days and stuck pretty close to my computer. One afternoon, after performing some minor admin duties, I re-listened to the sound that Pon had sent me. I still couldn't make out what it was, so I started playing around with it in the sound edit recorder. I sped it up a few times and realized that the foghorn sound might be the music that plays right before you fight the Metroid Queen. As I continued to speed the sound file up, I realized what the other sound was. Someone was talking over the music. I had to speed the sound up over 10 times to get it to sound like it was playing at the right speed. Once I had done that, I tried to make out what the voice was saying. I had to listen carefully a few times before I got it. The first part was an introduction. Someone was saying I am, and after that was presumably their name. I couldn't catch what it was. It wasn't an English name. The second part of the sentence was clear enough, though. Knock, knock. I'm here. Needless to say, I was quite unnerved at this point. I hit the internet again trying to find out anything I could about the version of Metroid 2 that Pon had been playing. I emailed people at the Secret Worlds website, I posted messages on numerous emulation websites, and spoke to people on various IRC networks. Most people thought I was joking, the rest thought I was crazy. It seemed no one knew what the hell I was talking about. Then one night I got on a private message. Look up Gunpei Yokoi. I was a bit startled. When I had been going around asking questions about Metroid 2, I hadn't been using Pesmerga as my name, nor had I mentioned what message board I was from. I replied back to the message wanting to know who was messaging me and how they had found me, but the user never got back to me, and after that night I kept an eye on the logs of user activity to see if he had come back to the site, but he never did. I then took the message's advice and looked up the name Gunpei Yokoi. It didn't take me long to find out who he was. Turned out he was largely influential at Nintendo. Some of the games he worked on included the original Donkey Kong, Mario Bros., Kid Icarus, Metroid, and Metroid 2. But what he is best known for is arguably his greatest creation, the Game Boy. It's often described as his legacy. I kept reading the article in fascination. When I got to the section about what was his life after leaving Nintendo, not long after he left Nintendo he started his own company. Gunpei Yokoi died in a car accident. I glanced at the date of his death and that gave me a shock. It was October the 4th, 1997, the same day I got my last message from Pon. I listened to the sped-up version of the audio Pon had sent me, and that's when I knew that the first part of the message was, I am Gunpei Yokoi. It was after this realization that I went through a period, which went on for about a year, in which I flat out refused to answer a door until the person identified themselves, and over the next few months I scoured the internet for any news stories concerning a missing teenager in London. There were several stories that would pop up, but the details were so vague that any of them, or none of them, could have been Pon. There was one story that did catch my attention. It was about a missing teenager who was last seen at home. His mother left for work, and she said he had been on the computer in the lounge room. When she returned several hours later, the lounge room was empty, but the computer and various other electrical appliances were still turned on. At first she thought he might be in another part of the house, but when she checked, she found that it was empty. She then tried to call his mobile phone, and that was when she discovered that his phone and wallet were by the computer. It was at this point that she called the police. They investigated and found no sign of disturbance in the house, and nothing was missing. Well, except for the teenager, he had vanished without a trace. I looked for more information online, but couldn't find anything else. I contemplated getting in touch with the police in London, but one thing stopped me. There was no way I could think to word my story without sounding like some crazy person. Even if I could figure out how to word it properly, and if this missing teen did happen to be Pon, there was no information that I could give them, and they wouldn't get off his computer anyways, and if it wasn't Pon, then I'd be wasting their time, possibly end up in some sort of legal trouble. The words, hindering a police investigation, popped into my mind. I went back through my conversations with Pon to see if there were any clues to this real identity that I hadn't noticed before. But there was nothing there that revealed anything I didn't already know about him. It was then that I realized that I always just assumed that he was a he in the first place. But there was nothing in our conversations that missed the possibility that Pon had been a female. The possibility of Pon being female instantly made the task of finding Pon twice as hard. In the end, I had to give up. I just didn't know what I could possibly do. I took screenshots of all my conversations with Pon, copied the pics and sound files that he had emailed me, and burned them to a disk, just in case I ever needed them again. Not long after that, I finished high school and then started working. Within a month, I stopped being an admin. I still stuck around the board for a few more months, but by then I no longer had the free time to post with any regularity. Over the following years, I got busy with life, and everything that happened with Pon had drifted further and further from my mind. I decided to write all this down and put it online in the hopes that after all these years, someone might know something about what happened to Pon, or know of the version of Metroid 2 that he found. As I said in the beginning, I honestly don't know what to make of this. Is there a copy of Metroid 2 floating around the internet that's haunted by the ghost of Gunpei Yokoi? And if you have the misfortune to stumble across it, does he come to your door, angry that you've dared to defile his legacy? I don't try to think of it too much. When it does cross my mind now, I like to imagine that the whole thing was an elaborate hoax perpetuated by Pon, that he set the whole thing up in months in advance. He created the images and the audio files, came to the message board pretending to be a technically inept teenager, which when really he was just brilliant with a PC. He was user 12345. He was the one who told me to look up Gunpei Yokoi. I like to imagine that he is somewhere out there, still laughing about the wonderful joke he pulled all those years ago. Somehow, though, sometimes, I can almost convince myself that it was just a hoax. I think that was how I was supposed to get to sleep at night in the months after I lost contact with Pon. And I think that telling myself that it was all a hoax now is going to come in real handy on those restless nights in the days to come.